We are in Parashat Toldot, and when I thought of what are we going to talk about today, I always think what would be a good topic to give over. And in this week's parasha, we learn about the concept of giving 10% of what you make. It's called maaser. I can't pronounce it in English, thigh, something like that. But when you make money, you give 10% of what you make. We learned that because Yaakov Avinu, he gave maaser, Yitzchak, he gave maaser, and that year he made 100 times more than what he invested. And I can testify that giving maaser, the 10% of what you make, is a very powerful recipe for success. I tried it on myself and it works like a wonder. So I thought of talking, okay, let's talk about the maaser. You know, there's not much to talk about Yitzchak. Unfortunately, from all the three fathers, Yitzchak, we don't know much about him. There's not much information, not stories. So I was like, okay, we'll talk about maaser. People like making money. But then I decided, we're going to talk about something else. Because everybody in their life, they have difficulties, challenges, and things that bother them. But when you become a parent, then there's a new challenge into your life, is how do you deal with your kids? Now, your kids will never be like you, even though you would hope that you will, pass something on to the kids, that how they behave will reflect on you. I mean, after all, it's very easy to say, if the kid is like this and like that, must be at home, that's what he hears. If the kid talks a certain way, behaves a certain way. And in many cases, listen, I also have kids, Baruch Hashem, 7 lovely kids. And when they were born, of course, my wish and my hope was that they will go in my path. But very quickly I understood neither one of them are going to go on my path. Maybe one, and that should be sufficient. And they don't have to go on my path. It's my path. But nevertheless, when my first daughter was born, I told my wife, just that you know, we are going into parenthood and we are becoming the architect of this person's life. However we'll design the basics, that's how this person will go out to the world. And my goal is to design a good individual that would be a God-fearing individual and will produce something positive in the world, and a happy individual. It's not about me, it's about that person. And like that, another child and another child, and there was always the thought that I am the architect of the person's life. But with the constant thought that they're not going to be like me. They're not going to do what I want. They're going to be individuals and I have to nourish them to be their individual and successful. Now when you include in all that the fact that we are very focused, we're very, I don't even know the right word, but especially when you are Torah observant, you want the child to go in your path in regards to Torah. You don't want the child to wander off to different faiths, assimilating, chas v'shalom, becoming rebellious. But it's not much in your hands. You do whatever you can, and the rest is up to the individual and to the master of the universe. Now, many times I run into situations that my kids behave in a certain way, and it's technically reflecting on me. And many times I've heard, your kid did this, your kid did that. Somebody told me the other day that we were talking about kids and teenagers, and I said to that person, you are a student for over 10 years. You probably heard me say about a dozen times, and that goes about 5 years ago, that I would say constantly, I'm praying for Mashiach to come, only that I don't have to deal with teenagers. My kids are young. When they become teenagers, I don't want to deal with teenagers, and sure enough, Mashiach is late, and I'm dealing with teenagers. Which I'm not surprised with how my teenagers came, because they really look up to me, so they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So as my wife say, you get to taste your own medicine. What you gave to your parents, now your kids are going to give to you, which Baruch Hashem, I'm not complaining. But why am I saying all this? Because many people think that if the child behaves a certain way, it's because of the parents. And it's not correct, because we're reading now in this parasha that Yitzchak was a tzaddik and Esav was a murderer. So what? People can point on Esav and say, oh, it's the education he got at home? No. But from the relationship from Yitzchak and Esav, you can learn a very, very significant lesson. But today I want to focus on something that can be interpreted or explained or taken in two ways. How do I deal with the next generation, which is going to be my kids and maybe down the line also my grandkids. And really when I need to think of how do I deal with my kids, because the ultimate goal that I have is that I want them to go on the path of the Torah and stay on the path of the Torah, and more than that, be good individuals. I don't need to go and bail out a child every 2 days or deal with different situations that I don't want to even tell you what parents deal with their kids, with many different things that I don't want to deal with that. But nevertheless, whatever Hashem is going to dish out to me, I have to be prepared. But as an individual, it's a very, forget an individual. As a parent, as an educator, you want to think, okay, how do I give over what I know to my child? And it can be not necessarily a physical child, it can be a child of somebody else that I just want to inspire and affect. But in essence, when you focus on that topic, you can derive from it a completely another message, is that the same way that I want to affect and educate my child, because I think that my path that I chose is right or whatever it is, but really in essence that child could be me. So for that we're going to have to go through the entire class, and really unfortunately when you're looking at Parashat Toldot, which is focusing on Yitzchak, who's called the sandwich father, right? Avraham is the first, Yaakov is the last, Yitzchak is stuck in the middle. Really, we don't know much about Yitzchak. There's not a lot of stories, there's not a lot of information. With Avraham Avinu got 3 parashot in the Torah. We know a lot about his life, about his actions, about his goals, about his achievements, his failures, and so forth. And then when we jump to Yaakov, same thing. Yaakov got half a book. The half a book of Bereshit, 6 parashot, is talking about Yaakov. About his life, about his journey, about his challenges, his tests. And Yitzchak, who in years lived the most, 180 years, half a parasha. Okay, we'll give him a whole parasha. Okay? So Avraham Avinu lives 175 years, he gets 3 parashot. Yaakov lives 147 years, he gets 6 parashot. And Yitzchak, who lives the most, 100 years, gets barely 1 parasha that we don't know anything about what's going on in his life, more or less nothing. But nevertheless, he's one of the most important figures in the Torah. So, what can we focus about Yitzchak? What can you learn from him? From Avraham Avinu, you can learn a lot. From Yaakov, built the entire nation. If you're trying to look for a story about Yitzchak in the parasha, you only find one story. And that's the digging of the wells. That's it. He was very wealthy, very successful, very learned, a great prophet, and the entire life, what we can be summarized into one story about him digging wells. That's what I can take from my forefather Yitzchak. It's a little bit unclear, but if this is the case, and the Torah chose to tell me that Yitzchak was digging wells, must be a very profound message in the fact that he was digging wells. Now, don't think that he went with a shovel and started digging in the ground. I would compare it to our generation with big companies. They go and dig for oil or go dig for gas or whatever it is. It was in a very large scale. But nevertheless, we're going to focus today on a mysterious story in the Torah about one of the most important figures in the Torah, that the Torah chooses to title him that he dug wells. And what's another point that is very interesting is that Avraham Avinu is a very successful figure. Avraham Avinu, not only for the Jews, for many other faiths, is a very special individual. The Torah shows him in the light in a very successful way, business-wise, spiritually, emotionally. And one thing that Avraham Avinu failed in was the digging of the wells. When Avraham Avinu moved to a city called Grar, city, area, region, he tried to dig wells and it didn't work. Maybe I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it well. Not wells, like in the sea. A well where you dig for water, right? Am I saying it right? I don't want to. Sometimes people hear whales. What are you talking about? Dolphin, whales. So Avraham Avinu was not successful. The image we have about Avraham Avinu, that everything that he touched turned to gold. But not everything that he touched turned to gold. There was many failures, there was many challenges. And one thing that the Torah is very clear about, that Avraham, when it came to the digging of the wells, was a big failure. So, just to give you a little bit of background about this whole concept, because our sages explain something very profound by saying, Maaseh Avot Siman Lebanim. The action of the father is a pathway for the children. And our fathers, not for nothing are called fathers, is to teach us a lot. You can take the figures of Avraham, Yitzchak and Ya'akov and learn a lot of musar, a lot of strong education to your life. So the Torah says that in the southwest of the region of Israel was a certain part of land that certain individuals took over and caused a lot of problems. These individuals were called Plishtim, or in English, how do you call them in English? The Palestinians? No, it's not the Palestinians, but the Philistines. So, by the way, it's two different nations. But the meaning is the same meaning, because the word in Hebrew, Plishtim, is from somebody that invades and takes over. So now they're saying we are the occupiers, but really the Plishtim are the ones who invade and take over. And the Philistines in the Bible, it's not the Palestinians of now. But nevertheless, same region, same place, same headache. But our first enemies in the Torah were the Plishtim. And they caused a lot of problems. They caused problems to Avraham Avinu, and from that point on, always caused problems, all the way up until the time of the time of the Tanakh, with the stories even with Shimshon. I mean, it goes in for thousands of years later. We hear about the Plishtim. Now, who exactly are these Plishtim? They came from Egypt. It's a group of people that came from Egypt and they invaded the land of Canaan. And if you go back to the book of Bereshit, a few parashot back in chapter 10, verse 14, it says, after Noah came out of the ark, it says the history of which child settled where and who were their children. So when it comes to the children of Ham, so it says Bnei Ham was Cush and Mitzrayim, and gives a whole list of the children of Ham. And then it says from Mitzrayim came more children, and these are the Plishtim. Asher hem yatzu mimitzrayim mehem Plishtim. Okay? So these Plishtim are like descendants of Mitzrayim. And why are they called Plishtim? Because they invaded into the land and took over and became troublemakers. And where did they settle? Exactly where Gaza is right now. The Gaza Strip, that's where they settled. Now at the time comes Avraham Avinu, and he comes to Hebron. You know the whole story. It's fresh in our mind. We learned it in Lech Lecha. He lived in Haran. He goes to Hebron. And at some point, for whatever reason, famine or not famine, he moves to a place called Grar. And he lives in Grar for 26 years. And Grar is where Gaza is right now, and that's exactly where the Plishtim are. And when he moves to Grar, he starts a new business. After all, Avraham Avinu was a very wealthy individual, that one of his business was hotels. And he owned, the Ritz Carlton all over the world, or whatever you want to call it. But he was into hotels, melonaut. And needless to say, up until today, it's a good business. But nevertheless, he decides to open a brand new business. He has money, he wants to invest. He goes to Grar, and he starts digging wells. which of course, what would be the most valuable thing in a deserty land? Water. You need water. So he starts digging for wells, and he digs specifically 3 wells. And right away starts a whole argument, a fight with these Plishtim, and it becomes worse and worse and worse. And eventually there's a whole disagreement with Avimelech, and they take it to the Supreme Court, and Avimelech, that's my addition, the Supreme Court. Avimelech doesn't want to deal with Avraham Avinu for many different reasons, and they make a deal, and they settle it. And in the Torah, as it says, that they call the place Be'er Shava. Shava, not Sheva. Shava means Shvuah, an oath. They took an oath. We're going to leave you alone. Because at the end of the day, nobody wanted to mess with Avraham Avinu. It's, not even Avimelech, who was very powerful. But nevertheless, after all this encounter, the digging of the wells fails, and Avraham Avinu goes back to Eretz Israel, to Canaan. Now, what do the Plishtim go and do? They go and they cover the wells. Which you think, well, what an attitude. You know, or either take over and use it, but why are you going and destroying it? They had the attitude, we don't want you to have any, so we're willing to suffer ourselves. But nevertheless, they go and they cover the be'erot, the wells. Okay. And this is round number 2. Round number 1, Avraham Avinu digs it, starts arguments, fights. If that would be a Hollywood production, there would be mafia coming and guns and threatening and we're going to kill you. And I mean, we're reading in the Torah, we think it's a little argument. I'm trying to visualize it for you. Imagine digging a wells. It's not 2 guys with the shovels. Heavy machinery, investments of millions. It's heavily guarded. And then the opposition comes with their goons and dark sunglasses and machine guns and we want to take over. You have to imagine how it really went to. So Avraham Avinu was also, as they say, not a friar. He also had goons and armed soldiers. But nevertheless, again, to go back to our story, the whole thing was a failure. So second time what happened was negotiation with Avimelech and he left. And the last round, so to say, Avraham Avinu gives up. And then he leaves Gerar. Soon after that, Yitzchak is born, and then Yitzchak marries Rivka, and Yitzchak and Rivka, they have Esav and Yaakov, and then there's a famine in the land of Israel, and Yitzchak is not allowed to leave Israel after being a holy sacrifice, a Olah Kedosha, can't leave Israel. So what should he do? Where can we go? There's a famine in Eretz Israel. So they go down to Gerar. Again, also, Yitzchak and Rivka, with their children, Yaakov and Esav, they moved down to Gerar. Now, happens to be that Yitzchak, also very wealthy, also inherited a lot of money from his father. Besides being a scholar, you need business, you need money. Amen, kemach and Torah. If there's no money, there's no Torah. So he goes and he plants fields. And like I told you before, that he was very particular about giving 10% of what he makes. And that year, Vayizra Yitzchak ba'aretz ha'im 100 she'arim, and he becomes very, very wealthy. Whatever he planted, 100 times more came out. So, you know, when you make money, what happens? Everybody's jealous. Right? Very few people are very happy for you when you're successful. So Yitzchak becomes very successful, very rich. It's all over the news. He's driving a beautiful Mercedes. Everybody's looking, and it causes a lot of jealousy. Comes Avimelech and tells him, listen, you're way too big for us. It's not appropriate. I think you should leave. You know, everybody's jealous. You're strong. You're stretching your hands. You're buying land. You're becoming bigger and bigger. You know, to save confrontation, I think you should leave. Yitzchak says, I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to make any arguments. No problem. I'm going to leave. But what does he do before he leaves? He goes back to the 3 wells that his father dug and the Plishtim covered, and he reopens them. He says, if I'm already leaving, I'm reopening the wells. Then anybody can come and enjoy it. I'm not looking to make business here. It's for the people who pass. Just imagine, if you're looking the topography of Israel, of the land of Israel, all the merchants from Africa they have to go through Israel to Asia and Europe, right? So Israel really is like the most important route. So Avraham and Yitzchak says, when all going, and where do the merchants will go? Always on the line of the sea. So Yitzchak says, I'll open the wells. Anybody can come and drink water. Why be so stingy? Okay. So he goes to Gar, he opens the wells, and what happens? The mafia comes again. It's our territory. What are you doing here? What are you touching the land? We want possession of the wells. Which reminds me of a funny story that I'm talking about. He comes and digs the wells and the mafia comes. And it's very appropriate to the class, because when I was a child, I was very ambitious to be successful in whatever I wanted. And I followed a few things that we're going to talk about in this class. And I can tell you that's one of the most important things for you to reach your goals and become successful. But I, of course, as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, always wanted to be successful. I always wanted to make a lot of money. So I always had all these initiatives to all sorts of ideas. So when I became a young adult, after the army, I was making a lot of business. And one of the business that I did, I don't even know how I got to that idea. I would go to farmers on Thursday afternoon, buy tons of flowers. I had 3 girls working for me. We made beautiful flower bouquets, and I would go and sell them. And where would you sell them? I would put them in different locations and sell the flowers. And that was a business, I'm telling you. I was 21 years old. I was packing it in. And sometimes I would get stuck with the flowers, because I would sell them Thursday, Friday. And the flowers that I would get stuck with, what would I do? I would go to one of the major intersections and put the flowers on the road. And cars that would pass by, was Shabbat. Of course, I didn't observe Shabbat at the time. And everybody would go, family, friends on Shabbat, stop and buy the flowers. And I'm telling you, I made thousands and thousands of shekels as a young adult. Okay. One day, I'm sitting Shabbat on my chair, a little umbrella. The flowers are on the street. Cars are stopping. I'm counting the money. A car stops. I come out. The guy walks, looks at the flowers. Yours? Yeah. How much? These are 50, these are 40, these are 30. You sell them? Yeah. So he comes and tells me, listen, you are on our territory. If you want to sell your flowers, you give us 50%. So I take a bouquet of flowers out of one of the buckets and I say, here's your 50%. Not knowing that this is like mafia. They come and tells me, you are in our territory. If you want to sell, you pay us. So anyways, it didn't last long. I had to pack my buckets and leave, not to get in trouble with the mafia. But the same story, Yitzchak goes, open the wells. The mafia, they come. What are you doing? This is our territory. What are you digging in the ground here? You know what's going to happen to you here in Eretz Israel if you dig now for water? The real mafia will come to you. The government will come to you. What are you doing? It's illegal in Israel to dig for water. Maybe I don't know how it is in other countries. Not too long ago, I went on a hike. I go on hikes in the forests, and we found a live wellspring, water coming out of nowhere. And we were just around it. I'm not exaggerating. 10 minutes later, we had rangers on horses coming. What are you doing here? No, we're just making a hike. Get out of here. What's the big problem? They thought we're coming to take the water, do something with the water. Rangers on horses. So in Israel, it's illegal to dig for water. But nevertheless, going back to our story, Yitzchak goes, digs the wells, the mafia come to him. What are you doing? Of course, starts an argument, starts a fight. And again, don't imagine it some old guy, Yitzchak, with a shovel. Imagine it like a mafia scale, people, action, violence, killing, threatening. Okay, so Yitzchak says, listen, I'm not looking for any trouble. I don't need to deal with the mafia right now. And he moves on. He forgets about it. So he neglects these 3 wells. Then he goes and he decides to dig more wells. He says, I'm not going to deal with those 3 wells. I don't need to deal with these hoodlums. I'm going to dig new ones. So he digs another one. they come and give him issues. He leaves it alone. He digs another one, they come and give him issues. Our territory, our place, he leaves it alone. He digs another one, they give him issues. At the end, they leave him alone. Finally, he ends up digging 7 wells altogether. 3 he actually didn't dig. He reopened Avraham Avinu's wells. Then he digs another 3 and the last one of his own, totaling 7 wells. And how does he call it? This time he calls it Be'er Sheva. Not like Avraham Avinu Be'er Shava, which means an oath. Rather, he digs a well in the city of Be'er Sheva and he calls it, this will be called Be'er Sheva, the 7th well, under the fact that I opened 7 wells. Okay. This is the entire story of Yitzchak Avinu. 180 years legacy, and all we know is that the man knows how to dig a well. That's the whole story with Yitzchak. That's what I need to take home now and learn from my forefather. One of the most famous commentaries that is called Ramban, not the Rambam, the Maimonides, rather the Ramban, the Nachmanides, he says, this story doesn't give him any honor to Yitzchak. I don't understand the story. No honor, no respect, and it doesn't tell me or teach me something new. Because Avraham Avinu already dug wells. So he didn't initiate something new. So what's the story? What am I, as a commentary, not me, the Ramban says, what do you want me to tell you? I have nothing to tell you. I have a responsibility to make commentary in the Torah. I don't know what to tell you. And like that, by the way, you're not going to find any commentary that explains to you the whole concept of the wells. Very interestingly, a few weeks ago in Sukkot, we conducted a special prayer, and it's called Tfilat HaGeshem, the prayer for rain. And we pray for the rain to come in abundance, not to come in a way of a flood to ruin the crops. And when we pray for the rain, we remind the Master of the universe of certain individuals that in their merit, we should get rain. The first one that we ask Hashem or we remind Hashem is Avraham Avinu. And we say Avraham Avinu almost sacrificed his son, what's called the Akedah. In that merit, please give us rain. Okay? And the next individual that is reminded in the prayer is saying, in the merit that Yitzchak dug wells, please give us rain. What? Avraham Avinu almost kills his son. That's sacrifice. That's something unheard of. So we understand, in that merit, please give us rain. Yitzchak went and dug wells. That's the merit. So first of all, one can understand that the significance of digging wells by Yitzchak is as strong and powerful as the sacrifice of Avraham Avinu. And again, we hear the wells. Okay. So for that, we're left with 2 questions. Question number 1 is, what's so special about digging wells? Right? Question number 2, how come Yitzchak was able to do it and be successful and Avraham Avinu wasn't? I mean, Avraham Avinu is the symbol of perfection. And Avraham Avinu failed? Did you know that Avraham Avinu had some failures? No. Most people you ask them about Avraham Avinu. Well, Avraham Avinu was, everything he touched was successful. For many people, it's new. Avraham Avinu failed in something? Yeah, he failed in the digging of the wells. And how come Yitzchak was successful and Avraham wasn't? So the Zohar says, so just remember these 2 questions, okay? So the Zohar says something very, very powerful. The Zohar says that the digging of the wells is a symbol of carving the power of emunah, of belief in a person. What does it really mean? That we all have emunah in us. Emunah means belief. And in most people, it's not revealed. And I'm going to take a short detour now to explain something about emunah, and we're going to come back to our topic. One of the most important components that we have in our existence, in our soul, is emunah, is belief. Why is that? Because belief in God, of course, not belief in the government. Why, of course? Is because the soul sees God, and when you see something, you believe in it. But once the soul is placed in a body, you don't see God anymore, so you don't have any emunah. And again, emunah is faith and belief. And we're talking only about belief in God. I'm not believing in anything else. I believe in God and everything that He says. Now, where do you see the proof to that? When a baby is born, they don't have questions in emunah. The baby is born, the mother takes the baby, hugs the baby, and starts feeding the baby. The baby doesn't like, whoa, is this kosher what you're giving me? What's the certification? Is this healthy? It's organic, not organic? Are you healthy? Are you running a healthy life before you're giving me food here? I don't know what you're giving me. The baby doesn't ask any questions. He believes the mother. A few days later, the mother is ready to go home from the hospital. Unless she had home birth, like it should be. But nevertheless, the mother goes home, takes the baby. You think the baby says, excuse me, lady, I don't know you. Do you have some references? Maybe I should go with another mother. I don't know who you are. So for the first year of the baby's life, whatever you give the baby, they don't question you, they don't ask. And not because they're a baby, because they believe the mother. Like people up until today believe the government. But nevertheless, the baby grows a little bit older, and after a year or two, starts developing some type of common sense, some type of understanding, and then he gets the shock of his life. That he realizes that his mother is a liar. Breaks his heart. Now why does he figure that out? Because the mother tells him, if you're not going to eat your dinner, you're not going to get dessert. Sure enough, 2 minutes later, he doesn't eat the dinner and he gets desserts. Now the child doesn't run to the room and says, okay, what was happening here right now? He doesn't go and try to analyze the situation. He just says, my mom's a liar. I can't believe it. Mommy's a liar. His whole reality is shattered. And then the father comes into the picture and tells him, if you're not going to fix your room, you're not going to eat any dinner. 2 minutes later, the room is a mess. He gets his dinner. So now dad is a liar. And a few years later, the teacher in class is a liar, and the kids lie to him, and by the age of 6, the kid doesn't believe anybody. He says, everybody's out there to get me. They're all liars. Can't trust anybody. I don't believe anything. Go to any one of my little kids and try to sell them something. Now what happens? The kid reaches the age of bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. If he doesn't believe the parents and the teacher and everybody else is liars, then why would he believe in God? Why would he believe in the Torah? Everybody lies to him. So how do I know it's really authentic and real? I guarantee to you that if you make an experiment and take a child and put him on a deserted island and never hear any lie, he would believe anything you tell him. So unfortunately, the power of emunah, the belief that we have, is shoved deep down into the essence of my soul. And when you get to become 20 and 30, you don't believe anything. The only thing that people believe is the government. Or pharmaceutical companies. It's good for you. But nevertheless, unfortunately, most people don't have any emunah. Forget about now all the jokes with the governments and that. Most people don't have emunah. Emunah means true belief. You're running into some difficulty in your life, you start becoming upset, angry, agitated, worried. What's going to happen? Well, you don't believe that Hashem is going to come through? You don't trust that Hashem is going to make sure that you're going to be successful? The sad reality is that most people don't have strong emunah. All it needs is a little bit of a challenge, and the emunah goes out of the window. So going back to what I was telling you before, the Zohar says that the digging of the wells told to us in the Torah by Avraham Avinu and Yitzchak symbolizes the carving of the emunah, the revelation of the emunah within me, that I can believe that there's an existence in the Master of the universe. Where do we see that with Avraham Avinu? Because he was the first one who went and stood in public and said, hey guys, stop bowing down to these idols. It's nonsense. There's a creator to the world. Let me show you. And he changed the entire attitude of the entire world, that there's a creator to the world, one God for everyone, stop bowing to idols and so forth. So the Zohar says, and again, the digging of the wells is a symbol for revealing the emunah, the belief in God, that what we have. If you would have 100% belief, you would be a completely different person. I'm now telling you, and that's a fact, that you can walk through this wall, because the wall doesn't exist. You know why you can't walk through the wall? Because you don't believe that you can walk through the wall. You believe the wall is there, because you see a wall. It's exactly like in going, let's now go to Hollywood in the movie Matrix, when Morpheus is trying to teach Neo how to fly, right? He tells him, "What do you want to fly? Let it all go. Fear, doubt, and disbelief, and you will fly." But the reality is that if you let go of your fear and your doubts and your disbelief, you'll do whatever you want. How do you think great sages like Rabbi Chaim Vital and many others were able to teleport themselves, do things? Why? Emunah. It's all emunah. Now, if you believe you can do something, you'll do it. Now, if we need to understand question number 2, both the question, based on what the Zohar says something pretty harsh. He says the reason why Avraham Avinu failed in the digging of the wells, that's to signify that from Avraham Avinu's effort, not a lot remained. It didn't stick, it didn't hold. He would come to a lecture, everybody would be excited. Once Avraham Avinu died, everybody went back to their idolatry. While he was alive and he was able to influence, then everybody followed him. But once he died, there wasn't any legacy left. The Zohar says that most of the people went back to their idolatry. And where do you see that practically? You go to a lecture, and let's now, for the sake of the example, you go to a lecture of a great rabbi. During the lecture, you are inspired. Inside, woof, I'm going to change my way. I'm going to go home and do this and that. And the second you go out of the door, your phone rings, you forget everything. You go back to your day-to-day life. Where's all the inspiration? So the Zohar concludes a very harsh point, that all of Avraham Avinu's work did not really remain and sustain, and a lot of it went back to its source. And Yitzchak is the one who actually was able to permeate the emunah, the belief, in the next generation. Saying that Avraham Avinu initiated, he was the pioneer. He started, but he didn't stay. When Yitzchak Avinu came, he was actually able to make it stick. Now, you can see it in relations to the Torah. I'm not going to go into other subjects, but when it comes to the Torah, I can tell you that, it's very easy to inspire people. If you know how to talk well, you can inspire people, but it doesn't really stick. It's not that people leave the lecture. I gave in the last 15 years hundreds, if not thousands of lectures. I see the excitement, I see how people leave the room, and I see the next day's result. So it's very easy to uplift people, but the excitement doesn't stay. The great wisdom is, how do you make it stay? How do you make it stick? That's a whole different thing. Somebody once told me in one of my lectures, he came to me after the lecture and told me, "Don't you get discarded from what you see here?" And I was like, "I don't understand your question." He tells me, you stand here for 3-4 hours, you inspire the entire crowd, everybody's inspired, and then they leave, and most of it doesn't stick. The excitement wears off, the next day comes, they don't become now observant. And then he compared me to a different public speaker by saying, in his so-and-so lectures, they put tzitzit on, they cut their ponytail, they take the earrings out. You see a result. I said, listen, the fact that somebody put a yarmulke on or a tzitzit on in a lecture doesn't mean anything. They can go home and take it off. That was the moment of excitement. But I told him the method that I work on is a completely different method. I plant a seed, and then I go. And it can take a month, can take half a year, can take a year, but at some point that seed will start sprouting. That's it. That's the method. You can't send somebody off from a lecture and expect them the next day to be the next Baba Sali. But you can plant a seed, and that's it. and wait. So the difference, just to conclude, Avraham Avinu made a great initiative. He started a whole movement, but it didn't stick. Yitzchak Avinu came and he was able to permeate it. There's a very interesting book. The book is called Sefer HaKtav VeHaKabbalah, written about 150 years ago. It's a book that is making the connection between the written Torah to the mystical part of the Torah and bringing connections between the esoteric part and the physical written and oral Torah. It says something interesting there. It says that the digging of the wells, so to say, the revealing of the water, was a shtick, was a trick of Avraham Avinu to bring people closer so he can inspire them and teach them Torah. Right? It was like how do you call it? A hook or bait. Right? Because you make a big well, you open it up, come drink for free, people come, and then he can start telling them what he wants to tell them. Right? Like a local rabbi that wants to inspire the community, what does he do? He makes a big meal. Everybody comes to eat, and while they're eating, he says words of Torah. Right? And by that's the hook. So the Ktav VeKabbalah says that was Avraham Avinu's hook. He made a restaurant, a hotel in the desert, feed everybody meat and wine, and then when they come to pay the bill, he says, I don't want you to pay anything, just say Birkat HaMazon, just thank the creator of the world. So that was the bait. You guess I'm going to dig wells, making an attraction for free, and people will come, and that way I can preach to them, and I can come and tell them what I want them to do. Up until now, everything is nice, but we didn't get a clear explanation about the point about the digging of the wells. And why am I so persistent about that? Because if you read the Torah and you didn't understand what the story is telling you, then you just read a book and you wasted your time. Every verse that you read, you have to derive something that you learned from it. And if you didn't, I'm telling you already, you wasted your time. So you read about the digging of the wells. I didn't learn anything. What did I learn here? That Avraham Avinu knows how to dig. So another interesting commentary by the Nachmanides, the Ramban, he says the digging of the wells, they represent the three holy temples. Right? Some type of a hidden message. Because Avraham Avinu dug 3 wells, the Plishtim covered them, Yitzchak Avinu reopened them. So that will hint to us about the Bet HaMikdash, the 3 Batei HaMikdash. Saying in other words, that sometime in the future, we will have to do something a little bit more fancy than a well, and have to do something that will be a great structure, which will be, of course, the Bet HaMikdash. And where do we see the connection? So, well number 1, Yitzchak, when he reopened the wells, every time that was an issue, he named the well. So the first well that Avraham Avinu dug, covered by the Plishtim, Yitzchak opens it, starts a fight, he fails. How does he call this well? Esek. Esek was some type of an argument there. Second well, Avraham Avinu digs, the Plishtim cover, Yitzchak reveals it, the mafia come, it fails. So he calls it Sitna. So this corresponds to 2 temples that we built and they got destroyed. And the third well that Yitzchak digs, no problems, it sustains. So that goes on the 3rd Bet HaMikdash. Very interesting commentary. Comes another commentary on this commentary, the Kli Yakar, and it says, I'll tell you something even more interesting. The first well that Yitzchak calls it, how does he call it? Esek. Esek means an argument. What was the first, which corresponds to the first Bet HaMikdash? What was the cause of the destruction of the first Bet HaMikdash? An argument between the royal families. Right? Malchut Bet David, Malchut Yehuda, there was an argument. Who's going to be ruling? Since there was an argument, the whole Bet HaMikdash was destroyed after that. Interesting. The Kli Yakar says, what was the second well? What did Yitzchak call it? Sitna. Sitna means hate. What is the second destruction of the second temple? Hate. That's it. You got a very clear hint here. Beautiful. And hopefully, very soon we'll see the building of the 3rd Bet HaMikdash. Nice commentary. And like I told you, this is all nice commentaries, but this is not pshat. Pshat means give me an explanation. What is the Torah telling me? What's the story with the whales? Okay, so let me tell you two approaches, and hopefully that would be clear enough to change your life. About 8 years ago in Israel, if you remember, was what's called a mecha'ah chevratit. It was a social, I don't even know how to, an uprising. It was 500,000 people went out to the streets to protest about how expensive is living in Israel. Remember, there was all fighting about the cottage. The cottage was cottage like cheese. It was too expensive. Remember that? If you don't remember, then I'm reminding you. About 8 years ago, 500,000 people went with tents to the streets, lived in tents for months. They blocked Tel Aviv because the yoker hamichya, too expensive to live in Israel. How can it be that I make 40 shekels an hour and milk will cost me 10 shekels? Doesn't make sense. You can't even make ends meet. Forget about buying an apartment here. So in the beginning it worked. The prices went down a little bit. The government was trying to work around it. Did it last? No. The second that they went away from the streets, they packed up the tents, everybody went back to their jobs, and the whole effort went down to the toilet. The prices went back up, and it's still extremely expensive to live here and very hard to make ends meet. Why didn't it last? Because the first generation of the uprising, they came with excitement. They didn't have anything to lose. They didn't have jobs. They didn't have money. They were sitting in tents in Tel Aviv. They came with ideology. They came with excitement. The second generation, so to say, people had to go back to their jobs. How long can you protest? A week? 2 weeks? A month? Now, who did they take to protest? All the students, right? That's easy to take the students. So in the summer, the students don't doing anything. September came, they all had to go back to school. So they lost their power. So the second generation didn't come with the same ideology, the same excitement. They didn't came with the so to say the power to fight. So it didn't work. Now we're meeting Yitzchak in this week's parasha, and he inherits a lot of money from his father, but he also inherits a challenge. First of all, his father is very successful. Now go into your father's shoes. But he is inheriting a challenge to take the revelation of his giant father, bringing emunah into the world, and making it stay. Avraham Avinu was the preacher. He was the public speaker. He was the one with the charisma. Now the son comes and says, how am I going to keep people close to me? Not to compare myself to Avraham Avinu. It's almost like me coming to my son and telling him, take all my students, all my followers, and keep them excited. But I'm not you. How can I step in your shoes? You have the charisma. You have the way to talk. I can be more wiser than you. I don't know how to do that. How can I step into your shoes? So Yitzchak is facing now with a challenge. I'm the son of the Avraham Avinu, that the entire world listens to him, and I have to take now the message and permeate it, and keep it alive. How am I going to do such a thing? And Yitzchak was a very humble individual, very quiet. He wasn't like a public speaker or lehavdil, a politician. So Yitzchak Avinu has to develop a method that not only he's able to help and inspire other people to keep the excitement, but a method that can be taken and applied for anything that you want to be successful in your life. I told you already when I was young, I was ambitious, I had dreams, I had goals, I wanted to conquer the world, and everything that I liked, I wanted to be the best. And Baruch Hashem, my father was very wise to give me a few very powerful words of advice. And he told me, if you want to be successful, and it doesn't matter right now, business, whatever it is, it all boils down to one word: persistence. Of course, the word in Hebrew is hatmada. But anything that you want to be successful in, if you won't be persistent, you'll never be successful. And doesn't matter where you take it. And that's the block and the stumbling block that will cause most people to fail in achieving anything of their dreams, is that they can't maintain the excitement. They can't maintain the consistent every day. You know why we are the only nation that survive and exists? There's no other nation that survived. Not the Roman Empire, not the Persian Empire, not the Egyptian Empire. There's no any empire that stayed. There's only one small nation that was able to survive for thousands of years. You know why? Because we pray every day. Shabbat every week. Pesach every year. Nothing changes. Persistence. Every day, the same thing till it becomes part of your life. If you don't have that, you'll never succeed in anything, whether it's business, spiritual growth, educating your kids, doesn't matter what it is, music, sports, hatmada, every day, when you want to, when you don't want to, when you're tired, when you're sick. That's the power. That's the power of Yitzchak. Yitzchak is gvura, judgment, severity, not moving, not there, not here. That's the secret of the success. That's the secret of the success. And my father told me, anything you want to succeed in your life, hatmada. And you know what? Most of the time you don't feel like doing it. When I was young, from a very early age, I studied martial arts. And I used to see all these movies, and I wanted to be like that. I was like, I'm going to be like top of the top of the top. That requires you to work out every day at least 3 hours. And you're never going to make it. And when you are locked on something, you know, many times the friends go on a trip, I was like, no, I'm locked on the target. If you miss one day, you broke the chain. And it's the same thing with business, and it's the same thing with anything. I told you, when I was 21, I got out of the army, I said, within 5 years, I'm a millionaire. I told you before the story with the flowers. You think the mafia bothered me? So I moved to the next intersection. Not that I wanted to deal with the mafia. But it was the same idea. Because, you know, when I started this flower business, first few weeks, it was a disaster. Most people say, okay, it didn't work. I'm packing it up. I'm wrapping it up. No, next week it will work. Next week it will work. And like that, whatever I chose to do, and later on, of course, it was very efficient and successful when it comes to Torah. You know that when I went to yeshiva, 3 years, like a stone, nothing. Nothing came in. I already got to a point that what's going on here? I'm not a stupid guy. I'm not a genius, but how can I not understand the basic things? 3 years in yeshiva, I didn't understand one word in the Gemara. I understand the words. I understand the taich, the translation. I don't understand any of the arguments, any of the sugiyot, not the question, nothing. What's going on here? I told you yesterday that when it comes to Torah, the God's wisdom doesn't mean if you're intelligent or not. Take the Torah now to Einstein, it doesn't mean he's going to understand that. Because it's a total different wisdom. It comes from your soul. But of course, you know the famous story with Rabbi Akiva that for 40 years he didn't know how to read, how to write, and then he saw the water hitting the stone and making a hole. That's what it is. I'm telling you, for 3 years, I would come home from yeshiva, I was already married. I would come home from yeshiva, my wife would tell me, what did you learn today? We learned. No, what did you learn? Torah. No, tell me something. In my mind, I don't remember nothing. I don't even remember what the rabbi talked about. I'll tell you on Friday. In the class, I would listen, hear, understand everything. Go out of the class, don't remember one thing. How? I'm not an idiot. And I was already almost on the verge of saying, okay, I guess Torah is not for me. I'll just do the basic things. And then one smart rabbi told me, you think you're going to learn the Torah in 2-3 years? In 40 years, you'll start understanding. But you need to get to that 40 years. If you're not going to build the foundation, you'll never understand it. What do you think? You're going to go into a yeshiva and they'll teach you chick-chack in 2 months, you know how to understand the Torah? You don't need to sit and toil for hours and the same verse over and over and over and the same page over and over. And you know what? Let me quickly calculate you. It took about 4 years that one time we went with the yeshiva. Every summer we would go up north to the Catskills. I lived in New York. That was the first time something penetrated. And I was like, oh, I already had a child. First time that I understood, you know, how it was like cracking a rock and getting gold out of it. Only persistence. Whether it's spiritual, emotional, physical. So the secret of the success of Yitzchak Avinu, the Torah says, very, very interesting. What was the success of Yitzchak? Kashemot asher kara lo aviv. Yitzchak didn't name the whales again. He gave the same names that his father gave. That was the secret that the Torah says, that's the power of Yitzchak. He could have named it new names, right? No. Kashemot asher kara lehem aviv. What my father did, that's how I'm going to name them. Saying, in other words, to take what my father did and to continue it. He didn't come to try to make something new. That's the problem in our generation and in many previous generations when it comes to the Torah. Oh, the Torah is 3,000 years old. We need to rejuvenate. We need something new. No, that's where you fail. You don't renew the Torah and you don't change the Torah. However, the Torah was given to our forefathers. That's what you do. Many movements in our generation say, no, our sages didn't have microwaves and cell phones, and it's totally different. We have to reform the Torah. They didn't have cars at the time of the Torah. Of course you can drive. It's not a horse. It's not hard work. Yitzchak Avinu's power and special secret was, besides the persistence, that he did not change anything new, took what his father did and continued it, because his father was Avraham Avinu. Saying, in other words, that he took everything and made it habits. Now, here is a little bit stumbling block, because the Torah tells you, don't make the Torah a habit. But it's a catch-22. How can you make it if it's not a habit? So that is a whole different thing to ponder on and think. But you need to make the Torah needs to be like a habit. It needs to be like under your skin. I told you last class that I have a picture of the first time that I put tefillin on. Remember I told you last class that Itzik brought me the tefillin and the talit? I have a picture of it. The talit is all falling, the tefillin is like here. It's like I think it took me a good year to get used to how to put the tefillin on. It would take me 5 minutes to say Shema, 20 minutes to put the tefillin on. One time it was here, one time it was here. I will make the knot, it fell here. Did I put 7? What did I... Now it takes you exactly 3 seconds to put the tefillin on. It's on the hand. It's already a habit. Now, of course, has to come with it the excitement, the prayer, the meditation, the intentions, but the technicality, how to put it on. And I'm telling you an example with tefillin. It's with everything you do in your life. Cooking, whatever it is that you do. Once you do it so many times, when you're young and you cut a salad, when you're professional, The uniqueness of Yitzchak was the power to continue every day the same thing. Can you do every day the same thing? No, you get bored. You run out of energy. You run out of excitement. You think it's becoming mundane, repetitive. Yitzchak Avinu knew how to bring new life to the same thing every day. Every day, even when you don't feel like it. I'm telling you, I can only tell you examples about myself. When I was 17, I wasn't the sharpest pencil in the bag. I was not a good student at all, very rebellious, threw me out of any existing school in Israel. There wasn't any schools anymore. So when I was 17, I told my father, I don't want to learn anymore. It's a waste of time, waste of your effort. I want to pursue my passion, my dream. And I went abroad and lived abroad when I was 17 for a year before the army. And I went to a special sensei, a special teacher, and I trained every day, 8 to 12 hours in my martial arts, started attending world competitions. And my goal was, okay, I'm now 17, 18. By the age of 23, I'm a world-class professional fighter. And that was my goal. And for about a year, I trained every day, 8 to 12 hours. 8 to 12 hours, non-stop, no life, no nothing. And sometimes you don't feel like it, especially when you're a teenager. You want to go out, you want to meet girls, you want to have fun. And my teacher at the time told me, the only way you'll be able to succeed, because he already took me to world-class events, and I would get my tuchas kicked there. Wasn't like some local place. He told me, if you want to be a world-class fighter, even when you can't even open your eyes, you get up, you run your 5 miles, you work out the 2 hours in the gym, you do 1 hour stretches, even when you feel you're tired, you're sick. Every day, if you miss one day, that's it. You break the chain, you will never be successful. He had the power to give me the understanding that, you sometimes see, not sometimes, you always see the end result, and most people are envy of the end result. You see a person from your neighborhood that grew up with you driving a beautiful car, you don't see that he worked his tuchas for 20 years. You see a musician that wins some great award, you don't see that person trained for 20 years. The sweat, the dedication, the hard work, we see the result. How is he so successful? How is he so strong? How is he so rich? What do you think, he just went like that and worked? Look back now for 20 years, how much effort went into that. Same thing, by the way, with the Torah. Sometimes you're looking at a rabbi, you're saying, wow, unbelievable. He must be a genius. No. He studied for 20 years, day and night, didn't leave the book. There's a great rabbi here in Israel. His name is Rav Meir Eliyahu. Walking Torah. He can quote you any book, any word, anything. Unbelievable. You would say, a genius. It's actually really unbelievable to see him. When he's asked, you are a genius, how did you do that? He's like, I'm not a genius at all. I broke myself on the Torah. Hours and hours on the Torah, persistent, never missing a day of learning, of praying, of anything. Eventually, you'll become big. Torah has nothing to do with your wisdom. It's godly. And that's with anything, by the way. Some might say, I don't have a talent. When I was young, again, I told you I had all sorts of dreams and ambitions. One thing that I tried, I told my mom, I'm quitting, I don't have the talent for that. Which I really didn't have the talent. But she told me, it's not about the talent. If you practice and you put your mind to it, then you'll develop the talent. Of course, some things you really need a talent. But the point is that Yitzchak had the ability to take something, permeate it on a daily basis, and keep it exciting. Even when you don't feel like doing it. And that's usually where you break, when you don't feel like doing it. And many times you're saying, I don't see any results. I don't see any physical or spiritual growth. I had that both in the physical side and the spiritual side. Physical side, when I used to work out, sometimes I wouldn't see any changes. Half a year, nothing changes. So you give up. It's not working. Same with the business. You try. It doesn't work. Okay, I give up. Same thing with the spiritual side. You learn Torah, learn, doesn't work. So it's very easy to give up. And then, of course, when the time goes by, why did I give up? So I'll tell you quickly a story. The power of permeating something in such a way that it's like a habit. That after the Holocaust, we spoke about it yesterday, how many people left their kids in orphanages, people ran away. We talked about it, how many people grew up, they're really Jews, but they grew up as Christians because the families just hid them. So after the Holocaust, there was a big rabbi, his name was Rabbi Herzog, who used to go to Europe and look for kids in the streets. And by the way, one of these kids comes here all the time. You know, Menachem that comes here is with a cane. He was one of the survivors from Unfortunately, he has his, he doesn't have the tattoo on the hand, he has it on the leg. He was one of the experiments of Mengele. He's one of these kids that was wandering around in the streets, and this rabbi pulled him out, took his pants down, okay, you're coming with me, and took him to Israel. So this rabbi would go from orphanage to orphanage, come in and says, listen, I'm looking for the Jewish kids. And a lot of the orphanages say, we know some of them are Jewish kids, but we didn't keep any records because we couldn't have the Nazis come and look at the records, so we don't really know who are the Jews and who are not, but try your luck. So one time, it's a famous story, what did he do? He would wait for the kids, he would ask, when is the bedtime? He would go into the room, each room would have 300 kids. He would sit on one of the beds and start singing the tune of Kriyat Shema. And suddenly you'd see heads popping up. Why? The kid heard it for so many years. When the mother put him to sleep, him, her, suddenly the tune of the Kriyat Shema, hey, oh, I remember that. That's a habit when you push something day after day after day. Listen, if you're looking at the education of the kid, yeah, you start with the kid over and over and over. It becomes in their system. Even if the kid, when they're a teenager, rebels a little bit and goes off, it's still stuck in their mind. What they heard in their parents' house. Yitzchak never broke. See, that's his power. Never broke, never gave up. He dug, they covered it, he went and dug again. Didn't look for confrontation. No problem. This didn't work, I'll go here. Dug, they covered, he didn't give up, went to another one. Till the last one was successful. So when you're looking at the first approach of this entire story, Yitzchak's power was to permeate, to bring down into the world, through persistence, the tradition of his father. That stayed with us up until today. That's what his special power. First idea, what the Torah is coming and telling me about the wells. You want your children to go on your path? Then you have to be persistent. You can't tell them one day this and one day that. You want to be successful in your path? You have to be persistent. You can't change your moods every second day. This doesn't work, this works, now I'm going to go with this guy, and I'm going to go with that. So that's a very powerful approach, again, with the digging of the wells. But there's another approach, another idea, another concept. There's a rabbi in the United States, some of you maybe know him, his name is Rabbi Weinberg. I think at some point he was the head of the OU organization, maybe the second. He was a great, great scholar, but also a psychologist, also a very knowledgeable individual. I don't know if to call him a scientist, but nevertheless a man of many trades. And at some point, he was also teaching halacha, a halacha authority. At some point, he had a little bit of a crisis in his life, maybe in his 30s or 40s, questioning himself, what should I do with my life? Should I be a rabbi? Should I pursue that? Should I become a psychologist? How should I educate my kids to be more modern, to be more Hasidish, to be more orthodox? He didn't know what to do. So he decided to call at the time the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who he wasn't a Lubavitch Chassid, but he decided to call the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Happened to be that the secretary of the Lubavitcher Rebbe picked up the phone, and in the olden days, if you would pick the same phone in a different room, it's the same line. Remember that when we were kids? Now it doesn't work, but I would eavesdrop, if my teacher would call to complain about me to my mom, I would pick up the phone and listen to know how to save my ass. Yeah, you hear the click. So the secretary of the Rebbe picks up the phone, and also the Rebbe picks up the phone, and this guy tells the secretary, listen, I'm Rabbi so-and-so. Actually, sorry, he didn't even tell him who he was. He says, I want to set up an appointment with Lubavitcher Rebbe for advice. He says, what do you want to ask? He says, I'm a rabbi, and I want to know to do this or that. So the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe hears it and says, tell him that there's a rabbi in Maryland, Rabbi Weinberg, he should consult him. So he says, I didn't say my name. And he says, what? So the secretary says, did you hear what the rabbi said? He says, no, can you repeat? So he says, the Lubavitcher Rebbe said that there's a rabbi in Maryland called Rabbi Weinberg and you should go and consult with him. He says, I'm Rabbi Weinberg. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe says, how does he say that? Let him know. No, so he says, so maybe it's time for you to ask yourself. That was the conversation. So talk with yourself. And that's when he got his answer. When does a person change? Not when he comes to a class or a lecture or a seminar or he's inspired by some billboard. Only when that person does something by himself. You want to change yourself? Lectures are very inspiring. And going to different role models or speakers, it's all inspiring, it's great, but you'll never change. The change will only happen when you actually do something that you are not told to do. You may be instructed, educated, gave advice, but you have to do something. If you want to change the situation, an action has to be done. Saying in other words, don't listen to me. Do it yourself. A few years ago, I had more time. I had all day long calls coming in, emails, WhatsApps, whatever, people asking advice, and I would take the time. Sometimes talking to hundreds of people every day. Now I'm more busy, more people to answer. Now I don't have so much the time. Besides the fact that now my answer is, what do you want from me? I'm talking about myself right now. People ask me, what do you want from me? I don't have an answer. You think I have answers and solutions for everything? If you ask me a question about the Torah, maybe if I know, I'll be able to answer you. Asking me all sorts of questions. Should I do this and that? I don't know. Why are you asking me? Now my answer is different. You figure it out. I can't tell you what to do. I can maybe guide you. I can give you some inspiration, some words of wisdom, but you have to decide and you have to do an action. You're not going to do an action. Nothing's going to happen. I'm not going to make it for you. Think I'm going to solve your problems? Or anyone will solve your problems? You have to do something. Avraham Avinu told everybody what to do. Yitzchak used a completely different approach. Yitzchak didn't talk. He didn't have a podium. He didn't have a YouTube channel. He didn't have followers. Yitzchak listened. He didn't talk. Yitzchak had a rebellious son, right? Esav. Did he tell him, stop killing, stop cheating, come and pray with me? No. Did you ever hear any type of conversation or dialogue between the fathers and the sons in the Torah? The only dialogue is between Avraham and Yitzchak when they went to the Akedah. There's no dialogue between the parents. Yitzchak chose an approach with his rebellious son. He only would listen. How was school? What did you learn today? What do you think of the political situation? He just listened. He just asked questions to listen to the answer. A person that accepts will never change. If a person initiates, then he has the opportunity to change something. If I sit and I accept advice, I'm taking advice, it will not change me. I told you already the story over and over. One time this guy contacts us, I have to speak with Rabbi Anava, it's emergency, I have to. He goes through all the filter system, finally he gets the time for the call. He tells, don't worry, it's going to be a very short call. I only have one short question. Can I do this? I tell him no. That's the whole conversation. He tells me, are you sure? I say, yeah, I'm sure. Are you 100% sure the Torah prohibits me to do this thing? I told him, yes. He tells me, you are the 9th rabbi who's telling me that. So you bothered 9 rabbis to ask me the same question and all said the same question? Couldn't you be satisfied with the first answer? Why are you bothering me now? 9 told you can't do it. Most people, when they come to advice, they go and ask another opinion, and another opinion, and another opinion, and another rabbi, and another rabbi. Just the other day, somebody contacted me, telling me, I went to this rabbi, I went to that rabbi, and to this rabbi, and I'm, okay, here's a broken record. 7 rabbis told you what to do, each one told you something else. What am I going to tell you? And are you going to listen? If you didn't listen to all these rabbis, or maybe you did, maybe you didn't, maybe it was successful. A person that takes from somebody else will never change. Because the person that will change has to initiate a change. And that's really the message of Yitzchak. Now, conclude with a story and you'll understand exactly what I mean. When Yaakov died, we're going to read the story in a few weeks. The tribes, they bring the body from Mitzrayim to Marat HaMachpelah. If you remember, Yaakov makes Yosef swear to him that he would not bury him in Mitzrayim. Take my coffin to Marat HaMachpelah. I should be buried next to my wife. Can you imagine Yaakov? What a ceremony. All the 12 tribes, including Yosef, the king of Mitzrayim, escorting the coffin. And when they finally arrive Marat HaMachpelah, Esav is standing there on a big horse with many, many goons, soldiers and men, and saying, you're not burying him here. What do you mean we're not burying him here? Leah is buried here. Yaakov is going to be buried next to her. Esav says, no. He's not being buried here. Because Yitzchak had 2 sons. Yaakov used his place of burial. He gave it to his wife. The other place of burial is for me. I'm going to be buried next to my father. Yaakov is not going to be buried here. So they, of course, negotiate with Esav. Listen, that was the will of our father. More than that, when he bought the Bechorah, the firstborn from you, that included the place of burial, by the way. More than that, that was his wish, etc., etc. So he says, do you have anything of this documented? They say, we actually do. Show me. Well, it's in the safe in Mitzrayim. When we moved to Mitzrayim, we took the safe down. It's in Mitzrayim. Go get it. They said, Naphtali, go get the document. Now, in the meantime, everybody's standing there, and the coffin is on the floor. The son of Dan, his name was Chushim. He was deaf. Okay? He didn't hear what's going on. He just sees his grandfather lying on the ground, and a whole commotion and some goons. He didn't hear anything. Sometimes in life it's better not to hear. But he sees disrespect for the grandfather. He pulls out a sword and cuts Esav's head off. The head rolls over into the cave and stops next to the grave of Yitzchak. And the story says that they took the body of Esav, buried it in another place, and the head was buried with Yitzchak in Marat HaMachpelah. What's the idea behind this? Is that the body that was Esav's, eventually got buried outside, the body is drawn to physical things. Desires and lusts and all sorts of habits and physical pleasure. So Esav the body represented the lusts and the desires for physical pleasures. Therefore, the body stays the body in its impurity, and it was buried outside. But the head of Esav represents the sparks of holiness. And Yitzchak was able to take a wicked person like Esav, a murderer, a thief, a crook, and with his attitude was able to elevate only the head, the sparks, to holiness. So he was able to take the most evil, not refine him completely. Esav was a crook, a murderer, everything that you say is true. But he had unbelievable honor to his father. All the commentaries given that. Yeah, the Kibud Av, nobody ever surpassed Esav. How did Yitzchak was able to do that? He knew his son was going off the derech. He knew his son is off the path. He didn't preach him. He didn't tell him what to do. He listened. And by listening in a persistent way, he knew how to make him change. Saying in other words, there's a famous Mishnah in Tractate Avot, Essex of the Father, chapter 1, verse Mishnah 14. Im en anili, mili. If I am not for me, who will be for me? You? I am the one who needs to make the change. I am the one who can be successful. I am the one that will make a change in my life, and only I. How? Through what Yitzchak left us is the persistence of every day repeating what I need to do to reach that point of success. And if I won't, I will not do it. If I want to be the best athlete, somebody's going to work out for me. I want to be a great musician, somebody's going to practice the piano, the violin for me. You can't do that. I want to be successful in the Torah. Can you learn and then tell me what you learned? No. It's not going to work. You have to learn. You want your child to go in your path because you believe the path is the right path, then you have to be persistent even though they go against you, rebel you, are mischievous, answer back. Whether you're going to be successful or not, it's not so important at this point. But you put this seed, whether they're 2 years old or 40 years old, it's irrelevant. I told you, that person that tackled me in that lecture told me, what, you don't get discouraged, people not running out of the lecture and putting a yarmulke on? I said, I don't need to see immediate results because the immediate results don't stick. I need to put the seed in. That's it. Once the seed is in, that's it. Almost 3 years ago started this whole Corona thing. I think I was not too chas v'shalom to take any credit for anything. I was one of the first ones who told publicly, come on. So now everybody's telling me, what, you don't have any new videos about what's going on? Well, I said what I had to say 3 years ago. Nothing changed. No, but do a video about current events. I said what I had to say 3 years ago. I exposed whatever I could not to get me dead. The rest is up to you. You figure it out. I need to send you now 700 videos every day, but showing you what's going on in the conspiracy of the entire world. I said what I had to say. That's it. I gave you, here's the seed. Now you develop it. I need to convince you whether this one is right, this is wrong, this is right, this is crooked, this is not. No. Because if I will drill and drill, yeah, you might listen, but you didn't develop the belief. You need to walk through the door. You need to experience yourself. I can take you to the door, but you have to pass it. You have to go through it. So Yitzchak Avinu is coming and giving us the most powerful lesson that the Torah says we don't need to give him 5-6 parashot. One short message and to the point. You want to be successful? You do it. You want to continue the path of your fathers? You continue the path of your fathers, not you. You don't add. You don't take off. You don't reform. You don't change. You do what they did. You want your children to go in the path that you believe is the right path? Then you have to be persistent. They're going to laugh at you. They're going to mock you. They're going to go against you, whether it's your kids, your family, your loved ones. If it's not your kids, then it's your family. How many times people become observant, people convert, the family is going berserk on them. You lost it, you're crazy, what are you doing? Yitzchak Avinu left us a legacy and a power that is able to permeate what I desire and what I focus on to make it a reality, to make it happen, to achieve my goals, to achieve my dreams, not to give up, not to say I can't make it, I won't make it, it's not for me. I can be successful, I can do it. And to understand the biggest thing, he had everything that he couldn't take from his father, anything. He inherited everything. Remember, we learned it last parasha. Avraham Avinu wrote, when he sent Eliezer, I'm giving everything to Yitzchak. Yitzchak says, I'm very happy. But if I take it, I'm not going to make any change. I have to make the change. I have to change something in my life. Now it's all left for us to understand that when you want to make a change in your life, in other people's life, in the world, you have to do something. You can't wait for somebody to do anything for you. Im en ani li, mi li. If I'm not for myself, then who will be for me? But you have the power. You are a descendant of Yitzchak. He gave us this power. You can be successful in anything that you want to do, as long as you put your mind to it, and as long as you are doing it in a persistent way. Hashem will make you successful.